Wafube, peace and blessings. This is me, Style Bay, aka Warlock Asylum, coming at you once again with another episode of the Warlock Asylum show. And today we're going to talk about Christianity and occultism. And I think this is going to be a great topic and maybe possibly I thought it would be a good one to cover at this time because, from time to time we hear about a person who may be part of an occult group or studying a church. Part of an occult group or organization or independent practitioner of magic. And things seemingly seem to be going well, but they, after a short period of time or after a long period of time or possibly a huge career, become Christian. And what is it about the draw of Christianity that attracts some occultists to it? First of all, in all honesty, when I hear a lot of these occurrences, I don't classify the individual making such transitions usually as an occultist, and that's a catch-22 that I would get back to later. Why? Because let's take a look at the definition of occultism. I share my screen, and let's see if we can get this popping up. There we go. And when we look in a clear sense, this is a simple definition that anyone can look up. It says, in the broadest sense, the occult is a category of supernatural beliefs and practices considered to neither fall under religion or science, encompassing such phenomena as those involving mysticism, spirituality, and magic in terms of any otherworldly agency. It can also refer to other non-religious supernatural ideas like belief in vampires or fairies, and movements like UFOlogy and parapsychology. Use of the term as a nominalized objectives has developed, especially since the late 20th century. In that same period, occult and culture were combined from the neologism occulture by Genus P. Orridge. Okay, if we can go further, the term occult science was used in the 16th century to refer to astrology, alchemy, and natural magic, which today are considered pseudosciences. Okay, so that gives us a clear overview of the term occult, and we can see that a lot of people who call themselves occultists or call this world of occultists occult phenomena are not exactly occultists, because as we saw, occultism doesn't apply religion, and in some ways it doesn't apply academic science. So what do I mean by, some of these people who call themselves occultists are not occultists? Well, there's a catch-22, which I will get into why a little later. Let me just move this mirror up. Okay, there we go. Get more contact with you guys. One of the reasons is because a lot of times people will worship an older deity, let's say like a Ishtar or Hecate or, just ancient deities, and that's not occultism because those things are connected with religion. You see, occultism in the true sense of the term has a lot to do with archaic sciences such as astrology, alchemy, the programming of the subconscious mind, minus its religious articles. Okay, that's the first thing. So someone who could be a devotee to, let's say, like they could be a priest of a certain deity that is not popularly worshipped today, doesn't make them occultists. It makes them a pagan, but it doesn't make them an occultist. Usually, they're probably able to access some of the greater mysteries more easily, or try to use the archetypes of ancient deities within this context, and that's understandable. But just because someone prays or invokes an ancient deities, that really has nothing to do with occultism, but it has everything to do with paganism. Okay, so that should be very, very clear. Although from the outside world, everything is all grouped together. Paganism, witchcraft, just everything is just all grouped together. So I just want to make that clear. So very rarely do I see someone who is a true occultist move into the levels of Christianity in the religious sense. Um, Now, I did mention that there's a catch-22, which I'll approach shortly. But one thing additionally that I did want to say is that, people involved with these things, which is paganism and stuff like that, it's even to fulfill the rites of paganism. Okay, or someone is working with a deity not popular. Like if you look at um, things like voodoo or um, Ifa or Palo Mayombe and stuff. All of these are not really occult traditions. You know what I'm saying? They're pagan traditions. So that should be understood first. You know what I'm saying? Occultism is a science, but it's not really accepted by academic science, but it's an approach, as we saw in the Wikipedia article, occult science, of trying to complete oneself. In the study of invisible things. That doesn't mean the person who worships them or donates to them, they could say like, hey, what sign are you? Are you an this and that. And they could try to figure out, why certain events are happening into their life. It has nothing to do with worshiping anything. You see what I'm saying? Even when it comes to something like demonology, that's a paranormal science, but it's a form of paganism. It's not an occult science. So when people say that they're an occultist, if they don't illustrate in their work where they're working with the greater mysteries and something that's devoid of paganism, then they're misusing the term. Now, a person who's a pagan can be an occultist. There are people, and I'm going to tell you why for this reason. A lot of reasons why some people who are quote unquote occultists do enter the halls of Christianity is because the stuff that they were studying has a Christian origin. Most of the systems, magical systems that people employ today were developed and founded by Christians or Muslims. It's just that simple. Enochian magic was founded by Protestants. John Dee and Edward Kelly, they were Protestants. The Keys of Solomon, that's another book that was developed by Christians. Voodoo is in unison with the Catholic religion, and so is Santeria. Okay, so is Palo Mayombe to some level. People may practice it independently, but really, these are sciences that are a merge of African traditional religion and Catholicism. Being a devotee of Santa Muerte is part of the Catholic religion. So a lot of times in the grimoires, the authors of these grimoires will always give praise to God. You see what I'm saying? First. And recently I had in contact with a friend who I know him for a long time, and he worked with a lot of things that I've worked with, and actually we had some of the same mentors. And he moved on to the Golden Dawn. And one of the things that his instructor told him is when he got in the organization, he was like, do you have a religion? He says, yeah. He says, okay, good, because I was going to tell you to get one because magic is not a religion. And that should be understood. A lot of times people try to take a magical practice and make a religion, but it's not really a religion, and it shouldn't be seen as a religion. You know what I'm saying? But when you look at a lot of the grimoires, a lot of even the Arabic grimoires, they give praises to Allah. The Christian grimoires give praises. Sometimes they mention the Lord Jesus Christ. Even when you look at the Simon Necronomicon, according to the story, that is a little bit questionable, just for me personally, knowing some of the origins of the book, but they talk about bishops being translating the text. It also went through Christian hands. Okay. And a lot of reasons for this is that in ancient times, the view of the study of occult sciences was not, it was profane by the Catholic Church, but even a lot of Catholics pursued occult sciences. There's some saints who rule over sorcery in the Catholic Church. So, it's kind of an interesting topic that is a little bit like smoke and mirrors based on what certain texts say, sacred texts say, versus, the actual practice of, what appears in a grimoire. However, a lot of reasons why they would give praise and honor to God, because they recognize themselves as the source. Even when you read the Simon Tome, it says you are from a race beyond the stars. So your interactions with spirits shouldn't be giving them power that is rightfully for the creators, because only the creator can subdue some things. But what happens a lot of times, if people are not connected with the source, they'll start giving credence to spirits for things that they should be giving credence to the source, and it becomes misappropriated. And this is where you hear legends of magicians, instead of commanding elementals, they're working for them. You see what I'm saying? These things also give credence to the source. You see what I'm saying? And so that should be respected. So probably one of the reasons why someone may leave a pseudo-occult path, because I doubt in most cases they're real occultists, because that science doesn't really, a true occult science doesn't really conflict with any religion. It's the study of invisible things. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean one has to give reverence to a deity or whatever. That's paganism. So a lot of reasons why, let's get it correct, people may leave paganism to go into Christianity is because a lot of the grimoires that they're using or organizations that they're affiliated with come from either Islamic, Christian, or some other large-scale religious sources. For example, you may have something like Freemasonry. Freemasonry studies occult science. They study alchemy, astrology. These are occult sciences. Yet it's said to be a Christian organization. You have the Golden Dawn, which is a Christian organization. Actually, I received this information recently, but even when you look at the sigils of the 50 names and how those drawings were created, was because they were created based on someone having a model of the cross in front of them and connecting the lines, the rosy cross. So, to say that someone's working with something and, they're working with some magic and, hey man, I'm not this or that, I don't believe in that sort of thing. But yet you're using tools that were created by Christians and Muslims. More than likely, a person may find their way back into either Islam, Sufism, or Christianity and Catholicism. Some of the greatest occultists in the world are Catholic or Sufis. You know what I'm saying? And it's smart. You really don't. Why I say that's smart is because they're recorded in history. You see what I'm saying? There's probably a lot of occultists. I can imagine a lot of strong paganites throughout the regions of in the ATR religions, a lot of powerful shamans in the world and stuff like that. But there's no record of them left behind. You see what I'm saying? The ones who have a record left behind were the ones who were involved in the Catholic Church and the ones who are Sufis and also Jewish occultists. That's another thing, because the reason being is that when you understand the true work, a lot of times people get into the work and the first thing they want to do is set up a shop based on what they're doing. So in other words, hey, I do this, I do that, and they want to open a store. And that's fine, you know what I'm saying? But as far as the path of the greater mysteries, it's not really about that so much. It's nothing wrong. A person can do both. But a lot of times what they will do is, as an occultist, they will go inside religious organizations and work to amplify that current for the greater good of man. I was in a specific occult organization that dealt with a primal current. And one of the things that they mentioned is that, it's good to join the Catholic Church. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I couldn't understand it at that time because I was just coming into it. And I had my own personal things with the Catholic Church, but I do understand that out of all the religions of the world that are mainstream, they're probably most identical to the religion of ancient Egypt. The other thing is that if I had to toss up a coin between Protestantism and Catholicism and the struggles of peoples of color, I would say that they will probably fare better under Catholicism. And a lot of times in like certain communities, people wonder like, man, like a lot of Spanish people, they're really doing well, they're progressing, but a lot of them are motivated by Catholicism. Why do I say that? It's because when you look into Catholicism, they have something called folk saints. These are saints that are not, they're local saints, like they're holy men of the people, and it's allowed by the Catholic Church. So you may find some people in Mexico who are revered, or South America who are revered, locals who were very popular in their community and gave a lot to their community. And why I'm saying this is because when you look at the African American struggle in America, who would be saints if the majority of African Americans were Catholic? Martin Luther King would be a saint. That's without a doubt. That would probably be sanctioned by the main church. Malcolm X would probably be a saint. Quite a few people. Marcus Garvey will be a saint. You see what I'm saying? And this is good because we would know that their energy is directly going to them. Now people say, oh, worship your ancestors. And they're worshiping forces, but they never really, and if they do worship ancestors, it's like a prayer here and there to a grandmother or something. It's not like a whole community. And, King did a lot for us. He gave his life. Let's lay him some fruits. Let's make sure that he becomes a saint so that, we can pray to him and get in contact with his mind. You can pray to Tupac and get in contact. Maybe that will be another folk saint of the African American people. So Catholicism probably would do a lot more for African Americans on the spiritual side than Protestantism. So what happened in the case of Martin Luther King, to show you how this works, was Martin Luther King, he was a Freemason, but he was post-humanist Freemason he was made. And the lodge made him a Freemason because they recognized that, this dude here, his mind has to stay alive in the other worlds. You see what I'm saying? Other creeds doesn't really give honor to that. You know what I'm saying? You have a whole universe in Catholicism that you could pray to. You see what I'm saying? Another person, which should be a saint, that should be tapped into, which should have a cult, is Marie Laveau. She used a lot of her spiritual and magical practices to help people who was oppressed, white and black. You know what I'm saying? She gave advice to politicians and things like that. She should be a folk saint. You know what I'm saying? At this point, the actions behind her tombstone reflect that of a folk saint. You see what I'm saying? That's where the power is at. The other avenue that probably would have been good is Sufism. You know, Sufism is another aspect. When I talk to Sufis from the Middle East, they mention that the Mad Arab's testimony reads exactly like an ancient Arabian grimoire. Very interesting, you know. But those things would help to condition. But for a person to come out of paganism and to go into the church, that's probably a little bit more conflictual. Let me just get this straight. Because an occultist can go into a church because that science is not religious. Occult science is not a religious science. So he may still feel the need, like, I need to acknowledge theology in my life, because magic is not theology, and you need theology to prepare your destiny for post-life, right? And that's another reason why, like in a lot of Caribbean countries and stuff, things were merged. Some of it was because you couldn't practice certain things openly, but really that wasn't really necessary. The idea was that to kind of create a current, some of it was to perfect certain things in secrecy, but a lot of it was also to bring theology into one's life. Now, if someone is a pagan and they're going from paganism to Christianity, maybe they just don't like the relationship that they have with the deity. And it's hard to resurrect those things, to be honest with you, because they no longer exist. My personal feeling, a lot of people know I'm involved with the mysteries, the mysticism of the Simon tone. And a lot of people also know that I work a lot with Shinto. Why? How does Shinto come into play? Because Shinto is still alive. It's still alive. It's still being practiced. A person, if they're going to practice a religion, they shouldn't really, in my opinion, practice something that's not alive today. You know what I mean? They can be dedicated to an energy from ancient times, but it's just what was demanded by that deity and some of its rites and ordinances. It's almost like impossible to practice. They could be modified for today, but they couldn't be practiced. And that's why Christianity developed out of Judaism. It was like a modification. You know what I'm saying? Also, out of something, because could Yahweh be practiced openly? I hear he receives animal sacrifices and stuff. But really, in today's society, if the priesthoods couldn't advance it, a lot of times those religions were also connected to stars that were above the horizon that are now below the horizon. And it's just really kind of an interesting topic when you look at the layers of how this conversation can develop. You know what I'm saying? But ultimately, when you're looking at the development to tap into power, it's two debates going on. One is that there's a lot of energy flowing from the mainstream religions that could be tapped into. And to an occultist, that actually increases the energy behind what he's doing. Then there's another argument that says that, if you give $1 to a million people, they can't do nothing with it. But if you give if you give $1 to a million people, they can't do nothing with it. But if you give those same $1,000,000 to two people, they may be able to do something. So maybe tapping into an old pagan current that not too many people are familiar with can definitely bleed results. But ultimately, paganism is going to spell itself the same way out as modern religion to the most part, unless you know what you're doing when you're invoking it. You know what I'm saying? Like, usually deities, they're going to come in dreams. You may have, some things, some high coincidences and stuff like that, that affects your life or whatever. However, if you don't apply yourself and work on your mind and train yourself in the true occult sciences, you're just going to be a believer, whether it's an ancient deity, whether it's in a demon, or whether it's in a modern day religion. But paganism is not occult science. But if you're an occult scientist, you can work with paganism and you could be dedicated to a modern day theology. You see what I'm saying? That may have a certain track record. You know what I'm saying? I think the Catholic Church has been around since the third century. Hey, that's a long time now. That's quite some years. So, you could be in either the pagan paradigm or, a lot of the religions that are still alive today and to be in the cultists. But a pagan distinct and a person in theology distinct are not practicing occult sciences except for the ones that were bled into them. So you have to look at, as an occult scientist, what we do is we look at what paradigm is best for us to nurture our current in. And that's how you can kind of see where you fit in at. What is some of your beliefs, different things of that nature. And, today there's, years ago you couldn't choose a religious path, where you was born, where you came from. That dictated how you practice and exerted yourself spiritually. Today, people have choices, you know what I'm saying? And the first state, let me just say this, because not to get this confused, that dealt with religious freedom, one of the first states was the empire, the Mongolian Empire under Genghis Khan. A person could choose their belief system under the precincts that he had established. Okay, so that's always going to be a perplexing, not a perplexing question, but it's always going to be interesting because people choose for different reasons to go into different things. Sometimes, in the pagan world, not in the world of occult science, but in the pagan world, there's a lot of treachery. There's a lot of people using, the energies of certain old deities to cast spells and different things of that nature on people. Sometimes there's a lot of betrayal, and a lot of it is because there's not a lot of clear codes of moral conduct. So the people, it attracts like a certain characteristic of people. And a lot of times, if you want to know what you should be involved in, you could look up the organization, or you could look up the tradition or whatever it is. Look it up in Google Images. Type in those words in Google Images and what comes up. And you have to ask yourself, is this going to give me prosperity? Am I going to be able to evolve from this? That's one way. Sometimes a person can be called to a certain path and, things of that nature. But that's more of a religious type of perspective. With occult science, it's more like, hey, I choose to do this. That's the first step in becoming an occult scientist, is that you choose to study something. It's not about what you're revering as far as worshiping. It's about, this is how this works, and this is how I learn about it, and this is how I can affect it and raise my consciousness through it. With deity worship, that's a different story. It's a different process, and it's a pagan process, actually, that is utilized also by modern day religions. There's a lot of paganism in modern day religions, and from paganism was heavily influenced, probably in symbolism, from a large branch of occult concepts, right? But occult science is not religious. Okay, it's distinct. So if someone's worshiping an ancient god, that doesn't make them an occultist. They're a pagan. Okay. And or they could be a witch also. You know what I'm saying? But they're not an occult scientist just because they're worshiping an ancient god. And those terms shouldn't be, although the general public utilizes the terms interchangeably, but for the people who are practicing the stuff, they should be aware of that. Theology is important in life, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes I guess, people, when you look at some of the mainstream religions as they are, their basic concept, they're very easy to become involved in. All you have to do is just believe. And, that's it. You know what I'm saying? It's not, you don't have to learn anything, everything is taken care of for you. Those are situations I don't trust. When I look into Protestantism, when you look into the Baptist Church, it was interesting because I had a conversation with one friend who left paganism because, she didn't want to deal a lot with death energy, you know what I'm saying? But when you become a Christian, it's based on redemption through Jesus Christ's sacrifice, which is death energy. So it's, I think a lot of times these things are easier because the aesthetics, there's a community, and a lot of the communities in mainstream religions are based on virtue, they're based on love. It's a two-that it's sort of a mixture between paganism and certain philosophical principles of goodness. I would say that because in some ways, virtue is truly your protector, you know. But they add in the God concept as far as like being saved and stuff like that, or people thinking that we have a contract with God and all those energies. I'm going to say this straight up. All the deities in the world come out of the underworld. All of them. All of them come out of the underworld. So when you read Gates and Necronomicon, and he says that the underworld applies to stars below the horizon and outer space, or chthonic energies and outer space, that means that all gods come out of the underworld. They were birthed from a state of unconsciousness. It tells you that in every ancient myth, even in the Bible, they all came out of this underworld. You know what I'm saying? There's darkness, and then there was light. They came out of the underworld, and so a lot of times, you have to choose what's right. Some people work through those things because it's convenient. There's people at the job, they have these religious creeds. Why rock the boat? You know what I'm saying? Let me just fall in line. Some people are very happy, very proud of what they're dealing with, and they benefit a lot from their paganism. I'm going to rock this. And some people, that's how they deal with that. And of course, the occult scientist, he may choose to be a pagan, or he may choose to be part of a greater theological organization, so that he can learn a devotional quality, which is important in the construction and raising one's awareness, the reconstruction of one's, to kind of construct oneself in the greatest sense, and also in gaining greater awareness. Devotion is very a practical way, in a way to show commitment to the source. You understand? So, these are some things that happen. But, when I usually hear about a person, leaving the quote unquote pagan world that some mistakenly call the occult world and becoming a Christian, that's a good thing. You know what I'm saying? They're doing what they perceive is best for them, because a lot of times people who are pointing them out, they're pagans too. They just call themselves occultists, but they're pagans also. They're worshiping a god also. They're determined to establish this path. And so it becomes a sub-denomination. which is what it is. When you look at religion, when you go online and look up religion on Wikipedia, some of it says paganism because paganism is a sub-denomination of religion. And a lot of it mixes Christianity because if a person's following grimoires and things of that nature, or, the Enochian path, all those things are Christian. You know what I'm saying? And they're looking at it like, man, it's not mainstream, but it's still religious. You know what I'm saying? It's a religious right. Actually, to show you how deep the deception go, they call themselves, hey, I'm practicing occultism, not knowing they're practicing paganism. And then they actually look at how the ancient priests of ancient cities carried on religious rites. Well, if you're an occultist, why are you looking at religious rites? So if someone who was a pagan becomes a Christian, that's just something lateral. That's not something up or down. That's something lateral. What they probably should have did is study occult science and then apply that to the religion that they were part of. That's probably the easiest way. A pagan does, on some level, have ideas about occult science, but they too should study occult science and apply that to their pagan path. You know what I'm saying? They should really sit down and redefine what it is that they're doing. In order to do those things, it really has to be devoid of ego. But this is a circular conversation because, in my mind, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about different scenarios, different things that I've seen in my own personal experience. It's just whatever it is, So if people are going to do what they feel best for them, then you continue on, you admonish them for what they're doing. It's not anything to really get upset about because, that's how they see things. For me personally, when I see something like that, a lot of it has a lot to do with feel good. When you look at the leaders of these religions, and this is the ironic thing, people get into a religion to follow it. But when you look at the people who the religion is established behind, like a Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha and stuff like that, they had challenges in life. It wasn't feel good. You know what I'm saying? So when you walk on these paths expecting to feel good, that's something else. It's not even following the leader. People say, oh, well, I did this, they did this so I wouldn't have to do it. And then, God is working for them. Although they claim to work for God, God is working for them. Oh, yeah. And all this stuff is said in the name of God, but it only appeals to their addiction. And then, they're changing a lot of what the scriptures say to fit a modern paradigm, because ultimately, to really follow those deities, you got to live a certain type of lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? And it's not what's going on today. You know what I'm saying? It's what's going on back then. And so that's really all I have to say in it, because, it's just something lateral. You was worshiping a deity that was pagan, and now a person's worshiping a deity. They're worshiping Jesus. That's lateral. Jesus is composed of pagan deities. So it's nothing big. But if a person was working with a grimoire that a lot of times were written by Protestants or Catholics, some Arabic magicians, some Jewish magicians, it shouldn't be too surprising that a person goes back into the world of monotheism or connects to monotheistic theology in conjunction to what they're doing. And that's all I got to say on that topic. But I'm glad you guys were able to ride with me for a little bit and, get in the conversation. Leave some comments below. We'd love to hear from you. This is me, Sile Bay, a.k.a. Warlock Asylum, saying peace and blessings, and have a good evening.